Hi, everybody. I don't have a whole lot today, but I know Tanya has several things that she'd like to report on.
Yes.
Great. I did get one quick thing, in case anybody's interested. I did get an email from the owner of the Weaver House, and it will be demolished very soon, apparently. So he told me that he would email me the day before. So I'll let everybody know in case anybody's interested in taking any pictures or seeing it or avoiding the area. But yeah, I'll let everybody know when that happens. So
Okay.
take it away, Tanya.
All right. Thank you.
Did we ever arrange for someone to get the plaque at the Weaver House?
Oh, no, we never did.
Who does that usually?
Well, I'm the one that gets them put up. So I would be the one to make it go away. The challenge is it's sitting on a concrete base. And right now I don't have a contractor like on the books that will go do things like that for us.
Do you know how big that concrete base is? Like how far does it go down on the ground?
Oh, it just sits on the ground. It's not on a footer. It just sits on the ground. So it's
go and get it if you want.
If you could, that would be great. Yeah. So the plaque is, I think, 11 by 14, and it's like 1.5 inches wider, and maybe it's 8 inches above the ground, something like that.
Seems like it would weigh like 100 pounds or so.
That sounds about right.
I can probably manage that.
If you could, that would be great. I've been trying for a while, and I can't get anybody to send me a quote so I can get some to go do these things. So I need to try again. It's such a little job that people are not interested. So thank you for the reminder, Colette. I can really write that. And thank you, Ian, for doing it. And then we need to, well, what do y'all want to do with it? I mean, we'll need to get somebody to let me back up. So thus far, plaques that have been removed have been for the handful of designations, and then some name changes. And the Weber House, Weber House. Anyway, the Weber House, I think it is. That one we ended up giving it to, like the grandchild or great grandchild, and they made a small donation to RHDC, and that's how we took care of that. The others are just hanging out in our office. We've got one for the Park Hotel, and I can't remember what the others were. So that's a question to decide what we want to do with them. That doesn't have to be decided today, but just to let you know that's out there. And that actually was on my list, landmark plaques. I have placed the order and will be receiving the plaques for the 4 most recent landmark designations. So Hillcrest and Oak Grove cemeteries, and then the McAdams house and the Valley Lewis Henderson house. And so the 2 cemetery ones will go on concrete bases, and then the ones on the houses will go on the houses. And I will next month. So the way we typically do it is we will, as the committee, staff will suggest a location. So we'll have a picture of the front of the house and say, we think it should go here. And then let y'all look at it and see if you agree. And we provide that to the property owner saying, this is the recommended location of the plaque. If you disagree, we can talk. If you don't want it on the house at all, then we put it on a concrete base in the right of way. But it's something that y'all get to, have a hand in. I can't think of a situation since I've been here where there was just an all-out, flat out disagreement about where it should go. So that will be forthcoming. The other thing I wanted to bring up was the Leitner Brothers study. I asked Richard Grubb and Associates, who had done the report on Hillcrest Cemetery. They had let me know that in doing the research for that cemetery, they found some initial information about the work of the Leitner brothers, and then I brought it to y'all to see if you were interested in doing some further research. And so they put together a a proposal for that, which comes to $4,900, and it would be in with one opportunity for y'all and staff to take a look at it and suggest changes. The sorry, I'm looking at it here. So it would study the contributions of Calvin E. and Lawrence Leitner, and their the Leitner brothers and the buildings they designed and built. They would look at primary and secondary sources for historical research. They will do interviews if appropriate, if there are people that know things. And it says that they would look at in Raleigh and Durham. I'm not sure, except to get just a little bit idea of, I mean, we're looking at Raleigh, so it seems to me that would be the focus. We do that. They'll photograph surviving buildings that they find that were designed or built by them, and then they will also note them in a GIS. All of that would be provided to us in addition to the report, which would be illustrated by them. So we would get the electronic photographs, the report and bibliography, and then any GIS data. The one thing, and then they provided, the sort of summary resumes of the people on staff and their experience. The only thing that I see missing really would be I would want the report to suggest next steps, or at least an initial assessment on which of those that are extant, might be worthy of researching for landmark or National Register designation. It is, in under $5,000 does not require that we put it out to bid. And so, and you've got the budget. So I'm open to any questions, or just, let me know if y'all want me to proceed with that.
What happens if they don't find anything? I did a little bit of research yesterday, and didn't really turn up much. I'm not saying that they won't, but it did make me wonder. Like, we just sort of assume at this point that there's this multitude of buildings that they designed in Raleigh and built in Raleigh, but there may be, but how do we prove that they built it? And what if
Right.
they find it?
Well, what we could ask is that they do it in two phases. Like do their initial primary and secondary research, and then do a little summary for us to bring back to you, and then you can decide whether or not you think it's worth moving forward.
Like how we do landmarks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that might be a good idea in this case.
Okay.
Because I don't want to spend $4,000-some on a project that might
Right.
not, you know.
Okay. So I will go back to him and say sort of two-phase, you know. All right, I'll have them revise that and come back. I like that. I think that's, I think that makes sense.
Hey, Tanya,
Yes.
on kicking the host role to me, and I'm going to fiddle in WebEx and see if being
Okay.
host allows me to add Caleb back in.
All right. Oh, hold on. Where are you? There you are. Control. A host. There you go. You are officially the host. Go for it.
That might not work, but I'll see what I can do. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, what's weird is that he still showed up in my list to be able to email and remind. So I wish you much luck. All right. So that was that. Okay. So last night was the joint hearing for Daniels and Haywood House. They will be on the January business meeting. One last time, I will have the draft ordinances be pulled together. The ordinance for Haywood House, is simply, change the name, and then, references the old designation. I've drafted an ordinance for Daniels for, removal of landmark designation. If that is, to have, if that's the vote that the commission makes, and that's what would be taken. I mean, it'll go forward unless the commission doesn't make a vote at all on the 19th, which I think is highly unlikely. It will go forward to city council regardless, but I've got that ordinance on that repeals the designation, on tap in case it's needed. Normally we would talk about it again and you would have another recommendation, but on this one I'm going forward with the same way y'all have been moving forward, which is just to have a discussion with the full commission as opposed to coming from research committee on that. So let me know if I'm wrong on that. So if y'all vote on it on the 19th, then they will both be on the February 2nd city council agenda. And even though nobody signed up to speak, we did hear from 3 people, and I might get an email today. I think it's highly unlikely. Of course, the applicant missed the deadline, and but I explained it wasn't a big deal. So they contacted me, and then 2 people in the neighborhood, one called and one emailed, just wondering what was going on. So I think that was more of a curiosity piece, but they do have 24 hours from the public hearing to send written comments. So if that comes through, I'll let you know. What else? Oka report is still sitting there. That is staff's issue. Do the final quality control on that. I know there were a few boundary issues, a couple properties that need to make sure they're in there. The LGBTQ historic context is still underway. The contract is getting extended, and so that we can finish it up this year. The next step is to plan the neighborhood or the community meeting. At this point, it's going to be virtual, and so with that in hand, we will talk to the consultant, see if he's done any virtual community meetings. We've got staff and planning department that have been, trained and have held some community virtual meetings. And so we will get some guidance on that, and that will move forward. As a reminder, the point of the community meeting is to talk about the project, but also to see if there is anybody else that we've missed that might be appropriate for the oral interviews. We provided a list of some folks to the consultant, but we just want to make sure we're reaching out and are talking to as many of the right people as possible, or rather, that the 10 people that get interviewed are the 10 right people. And for also, in addition to ordering the plaques for the new landmarks, the blurbs is what we call them, the text that goes on Raleigh Historic, that Cynthia D. Miranda with MDM Historical Consultants, that's who has been writing them for us. So they all have the same voice. So she is on tap now. I've sent her the information, so I should have those by probably by the end of the month. And then they will be added to Raleigh Historic. And then the Community Awareness Committee will be promoting them, sharing. Yay, we have landmarks. And then the only other thing, well, actually there are two things. Aaron, don't let me forget about the community awareness discussion. I'll actually let you do that. The only other thing on my list was y'all had talked about last month about possibly doing another updating the architectural survey, focusing on African American resources beyond those that we've already done. I've got a meeting set up with the State Historic Preservation Office staff next week to talk about potential scope, get an idea of how much it would cost, and depending on how much it costs, I think it would be good to apply for a Historic Preservation Fund grant to help fund that. And I think the deadline to apply for that is early February, I think. And then it would still have to be due, I think, by August. I think it's like a really quick turnaround time. But we would put out a request for proposals, and those we would bring back to the research committee to help decide who gets hired to do the work. The other step is staff has to go internally through the city process to ask permission to apply for a grant. And these grants are, it's a matching grant. You have to put up at least 40%, I think, 40, 60, typically because we are better funded than most of the historic preservation commissions across the state. Usually do at least 50-50 and sometimes 60-40, so that there's more money available for other communities, because it's a limited pot of money that the state has to dole out from the feds. So I'll let you know about that, but I think that's good. I think I'll just keep moving forward on that. And if for some reason at the retreat we hear that no, that's not what we're going to be spending the money on, then I can pull back. But unless you tell me otherwise, I'm going to keep moving forward on that process. And that's all I had. Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
People who are interested in I think this fits with what you were talking about. How do we approach historic status or delisting status of things that relate to the African American community in Raleigh? And so I know Nick said once before, at some point we're going to have to discuss it and start setting some precedents about how do we deal with history and its relation to racism and evolution. So, I was wondering, and I was going to actually send Nick a note, but I think I could bring it up here if, and I'm willing to take responsibility work with you to do this. I don't know what the rules are, but if we couldn't do a separate little subcommittee to begin to discuss how we're going to address these issues, and certainly as we look at historic preservation of specifically African-American architecture, they might be integrated into a little discussion around that. And that probably needs to be a little bit separate group.
I agree with you. I think that's possible. I do want to, so I think as we have these conversations, we need to work with the Human Relations Commission within the city. Dr. Andrea Caesar is running that, and I reached out to her just before the new year and heard back and told them, you know, what y'all are working on to sort of get on the radar. So the city is going to be doing both for staff and city council, and then boards and commissions too, doing some sort of equity training, which I think needs to be part of this. So like, even I think before we have the conversation, we need to sort of set the bar about how we're going to talk about it, regardless of what the, whether we're talking, let's see, regardless of the specific topic, like architecture and history is your role, you know,
Right.
The Greenway Advisory Board, they have a different role. So regardless of what the actual role is, that you're on the same thing. So she said she would get back with me on that.
Yeah,
So I'm
the equity training would be so important, because you're right, we all have to,
right.
we would not
right.
want to make recommendations that flew against some of what the city overall, but I do think we as need to address it. So as soon as you're ready to carry that further, please holler. I'd love
Yeah,
to
no,
get involved. And there are a few other people who've mentioned they would like to be involved as well.
Yeah. Keep bringing it up. There's a lot going on. I would actually bring it up at the retreat.
Okay.
And so that it can officially, you know, that's the way to get it officially on the work program, and it doesn't get, you know, forgotten, and for lack of a better word. I don't think it will. I think that we can still do the inventory to find out what's there. And then part of what you'll be looking, you know, to find out what's there and get the history. And then I think moving forward, gosh, I lost my train of thought. Oh, I think the conversation will be, you know, now we know what's here, what do we do with it? And thinking about it. So identification and designation is RHDC's role. You don't do a whole lot of interpretation. You do a little bit because we write things, but it is different than, say, the Historic Resources Museums Advisory Board, which is actually, you know, providing guidance on curating and interpretation of historic sites. So that'll be part of the discussion is, you know, what part of preservation, you know, is really, I'm not being very, what should the focus be as you're talking about it? Because it may be, yeah.
We have that sensitive line in recognizing our history, which is our job, and preserving the integrity without violating human rights. So I think the equity piece is going to be super important. Okay, thank you.
I agree.
Will keep, you know, that's been something near and dear to my heart, and from several other people on the committee too. So.
Well, and I think too that it will also be useful when we are talking, you know, not just talking about, you know, African American history, but also with other, you know, underrepresented communities that and how to work with them as well, and who potentially may have an ugly sort of ugly history or have been, what's the word?
People learn that
Persecuted.
there's probably lots of architecture that we have overlooked because it hasn't been first and foremost in the way we've approached this. Because
Exactly.
and I think that's why equity training is going to be so important, because we're going to look across all demographics and all cases. And there's probably some really interesting things we're going to get out of it. So I'm looking forward to exploring that with you all.
Great. All right, now I'm done talking. Erin, you want to talk about community awareness?
Can I
Sure. Sorry, go ahead, Ian.
real quick? Has staff made any decision on the email that Heather Leah sent out about the wording?
Oh, sorry. No, I have not had a chance to look at it yet. So I will look at it. I want to compare. So right now, what is online, I believe is taken directly from the National Register nomination. I want to look at that and see. I think that particular language tweak we can do pretty quickly and easily, and doesn't change the intent of anything. But I want to be careful and deliberate with any changes that are being made, so that we're not, undoing, because then you end up having one document that says something one place versus what is available online. So I have not, and that's really my primary concern with that is consistency. The other piece, actually, that, since you brought that up, it is possible that we could look at the language for on any of our blurbs on the Raleigh Historic. That was all, those are all written by, consultants for us using information. So that would be it doesn't look, we don't have district information on there at the moment. It's all individual landmarks, but that would be the easiest place to make language changes if we see something that deems necessary. So that was a long way to say no, but it's on my radar. Does that make sense? But
Okay.
What is this? I'm not sure if I'm looking through my inbox. I'm not seeing an email about this. I'm just curious what is concerning.
Yeah, I didn't get it either.
Want to explain, Ian? Because I only.
Sorry about that. I'd forgotten that. No, I was the only one that got that. Apparently, somebody emailed Heather Leah about the wording in the description for the Oakwood Historic District that describes it as being a white neighborhood, and they offered up an example that said that there were Black residents in Oakwood, which there were, and said that it should be changed. And my response was that it, by and large, it was a white neighborhood, always has been, or was. There were a few Black residents, but I don't believe that the description needs to mention that it was a white neighborhood. I don't think it actually serves any purpose at all in there. So it should probably just be deleted. But yeah, that's the background on that.
Sorry, just unmuted. I am more comfortable just like removing something rather than tweaking language that may not be the intent. So I will look at that. And I agree, if it doesn't serve any purpose, then it needs to be there. So, and that's actually, I think, ties in very nicely with what Erin was going to bring up.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
first of all, Caleb, can you hear the discussion? Okay. Do you want to test your mic so we can see if we can hear you weigh in?
Buenos dias.
Hola. We've got you. eight years of Spanish, and that's about as far as I can get. It's very disappointing.
Well, my dad was a Spanish professor at NC State, so I at least kind of knew that.
You have a leg up.
Yeah.
All right, so we had our community awareness meeting yesterday, and part of the conversation, a lot of the community awareness outreach currently is digitally based and focused around social media, and will be even when we move back into trying to do some in-person events as well. So we, over the last couple 2 to 3 months, have been trying to plan out what we think the next month's posts should be about. They've generally been themed. And I think 3 or 4 posts over the course of the month. And Heather is currently taking care of all of those posts for us on Facebook. And I believe Gaston is going to start copying those over onto the Instagram account so that we're sort of hitting 2 platforms. Predominantly what they post about is centered or pulled, the information is pulled from what we already have, either written in a National Register nomination or on rhdc.org or Raleigh Historic, but previously vetted and approved and posted information that they just copy in and can add photographs to or something like that to engage. So our questions here, given that social media is an interactive platform, Heather's been getting comments on those posts or questions on those posts about the content that we then need to turn around and answer, but to do so in a freestyle way where we don't really know because we haven't done the research yet. How do we make sure that we're putting out accurate information, that we're vetting it, and we're not saying something that is only partially true or we don't really know. So there was a discussion about how to get those questions answered in a timely manner by funneling them through the research committee. So most of the posts are already vetted, copied in information, but when we have to go kind of freestyle here, how do we get the proper answer in a time frame that is accurate for social media? We know it's not going to be, answering within an hour, but Heather can say, I don't know, we need to look into that and then push a question to the research committee. So what we talked about yesterday was just trying to keep it loose and flowy, potentially with an email to the commission members on this committee, as well as Caleb, if you are amenable to that, since you've got the archaeology expertise that might come into play with some of these questions, that then somehow you all could coordinate and get an answer back that she could post when she gets questions. So just interested to hear your thoughts on what that process might be, and how we can handle it.
Staff would also take, a look at it and reply back. It may be that we have some other research report, and it may be we have a lot of I don't knows, but it's important to me that, content questions the research committee's domain.
What were you thinking in terms of timeline, like a day or 6 hours or?
I think a day, well, that's up for discussion. The city's social media policy is that there is a response within 1 hour. We are removing ourselves as city employees from that engagement so that this is handled, by you guys as the nonprofits, that those rules are not quite as strict on you. I mean, it is social media though, so we don't want to wait a month for the next research committee meeting to go through those questions, get the answers, and push it back out. I think a day is probably okay. I think go ahead, Tanya.
I was going to say, I think it's reasonable for Heather to do a real quick reply saying, "Hey, good question. I'm getting the answer," to get so they know they're not being ignored, and then you know, by that way.
I mean, I don't have any problem just getting an email from Heather or anyone, and I can reply. I mean, I do research all day long, so I have no problem doing it and doing more of it.
Well, and I think too that if it's coming from, you know, it's coming from RHDC, that the information come based on the sort of collective knowledge of the entity as a whole. So if, for example, because of your personal knowledge and your profession, Ian, you know more, that the answer could say, you know, we know this, but in my own research, I've found this. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
It's clear this is what RHDC knows through research and has given the check mark, versus we also happen to have some really smart people on the commission that also know stuff, kind of thing, and making that very, making it clear.
Maybe a way to do that would be for me to personally reply on the question.
To do what?
To personally reply, as in like go on my Facebook account.
So that's absolutely a possibility.
And then RHC as a Facebook profile can say, Ian is our is on the commission. Our commissioner, you know, point out, because that does sort of give it a more of a human, like we're actual people behind the scenes.
I like that. Other thoughts? Right, Matt.
I'm happy to help with that as needed. So
Yeah, so I think what I would suggest is that she, like Aaron said, sends a group email to the committee and Caleb, and then of course copying staff. And then that way we all know, and maybe it could even be a quick tap in saying, okay, hey, I've got this one, so that the rest of us can ignore it and move along. I really like your idea about replying from your personal account, and then so it's sort of a tag team. Not sure what happened to Aaron.
Sorry, I needed to plug this in.
If we're gonna go with that approach, would it be better for Heather or whoever is seeing the comments that have a question that need a larger interpretation? Is it better for her to send an email or for her to put the response saying, let's ask our committee experts, and then tagging them directly in her response?
That's a good idea.
So that way there's not an extra email step.
I think maybe both. That way, if there is additional conversation to be had or input from staff or from other members of the committee, that conversation can be had via email and kind of sculpted into a reply. And that way also the rest of the research committee members are aware of the questions as they come in, assuming that we don't have everyone willing to use personal accounts to be tagged in each question.
On a procedural thing, like if it goes out to everybody, who's accountable? Is it Heather? And I think that, and it was referred to the club, and the commission has a day to get back to it. Who's ultimately going to get back? You know, and I think we do need a point person on this, rather than always the whole group. And if that's Ian, that's great. To thinking about it, but if we don't have a point person, I'm afraid that you'll have 4 or 5 people go, I've got it, and maybe we don't have it, or maybe we do, or nobody responds, and then it's Heather's responsibility to chase us down to get an answer. I'm just looking for a little bit more procedure.
No, I like that. I think that it should be, I think it should be actually one of staff, just to make sure, to sort of make sure an answer gets back and sort of remind, Heather, and we'll discuss amongst ourselves whether it's, Colette as primary rep for research or Aaron as the primary rep for community awareness, who wants to take that on. I still think if someone happens to have, personal knowledge, you can say, hey, I've got this. I anticipate most of them are going to be Ian, but that may not, necessarily be the case, but we can at least make sure that that loop is closed. I do want to make sure I see it, only because it could be that I happen to know of a research report that has more information that is on, RHDC.org, and I can reply and say, hey, go check, to Heather, say, let them know that this document exists if they want to, read in full.
Do we receive a lot of these questions, or what kind of volume are we getting? Just curious.
I don't think it's too many per month. Since October, I think Heather has pushed an email to us, 2 or 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if there are questions that she knows the answers to that she's fielding and not pushing. To be honest, I don't check in on social media frequently, which I probably should as the staff and community awareness point. So I don't think that we're going to be overwhelmed with the need to get these researched and pushed back out. We just need to have an arm in place to take care of it when we do. And I like the discussion, because on that horrible day when Ian is no longer on the commission and willing to be at our beck and call, we need to have a system in place to figure out how we get things answered. So thank you.
So Tanya, do you have anything else?
Nope, that's it. If I did, I forgot it, but that was everything that was on my list.
Okay. Well, I don't have anything else, so.
Ian, before we go, I am just curious to hear from Caleb how you were able to get yourself back into this meeting for the future.
My very wise and experienced wife, who does these meetings all the time, said, try from a different device. So that's what I did.
Well,
Great.
Yeah, I've got a laptop, and then that's what I was trying on originally. And then I tried my iPad instead, and that seemed to work.
well, and I have learned to just let you log out and log back in yourself instead of expelling. So.
Caleb, did you use the link that I sent or that they sent?
I'm not sure. I received several. I'm not sure which one I used for this
I
time.
thought that may be the issue, is that the link that I copy and pasted was somehow different or something. I don't know.
I mean, it worked the first time, and then it had something to do with me, because when I tried the first time, I could see and hear y'all, but you couldn't see me. So I think Tanya just booted me to see if we could sort of try again, and that did something.
That did not work.
All right.
One more thing, back to Susan's question from earlier concerning the Black history questions and things like that. If anything, I know it probably won't before we have our retreat and discuss it there, but in the meantime, if anything comes up with the Human Relations Commission stuff or anything related to that, I'd like to be looped in as that occurs. That'd be okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Just make sure you send me the minutes of what y'all talked about, so I know what was going on.
Sure, I can one of us could do that. I just, literally, it was just quick updates on what was on that agenda list.
Okay, well, it's nice seeing everyone. See you soon.
Bye, thank you.
Thanks.